Join Chris and Suzanne Vester today on Faith, Family, Fulfillment as they lead discussions on creating a strong bond and having a loving relationship through Christian values. Guests on the show share insightful stories and ideas to enhance a positive family upbringing and create trust in one another, as well as providing encouraging words of wisdom everyone should hear. And now, here are Chris and Suzanne.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Faith, Family, Fulfillment. I am your co-host, Chris.
And I'm Suzanne.
And I usually start out by saying we have an amazing couple. I guess we can call ourselves amazing because we don't have a couple today. We had someone scheduled. And what's really hard, we have figured out through doing this podcast, is getting the idea of couples to sit down and have conversation. It's real easy to get one half of them to say yes. Getting both of them to find time on the schedule and graciously bless us with some wisdom has been difficult. We had someone scheduled today and they canceled because of
their whole family is sick. So we do wish them very quick recovery and we hope their family's feeling better. So today you just, you get Chris and myself, and we're going to kind of recap our first 5 episodes and our personal takeaways. But before we do that, why don't you share how we became this.
So we had some conversation back in July of 2020 about the idea of a podcast and being able to share the stories of successful couples who had been through lots of life and how they use their faith to develop their family, to find fulfillment in their life,
drive their business,
drive business. And how all those are integrated to really live a life of integrity, how everything's the same. They show up the same everywhere they are. And I've said on multiple occasions, life comes with an instruction book. We get an owner's manual and we treat it like every other owner's manual that we ever get. Like with a car, you just throw it in the glove box, and when there's a problem, you turn to the troubleshooting section and go, well, how do I fix this fuse that's broken? And rather than treating life, the book of life, the Holy Bible, is an owner's manual that we throw in a glove box somewhere. It's what we've figured out is most of these couples use it truthfully as a way to live their life. And we think that by sharing their stories and them sharing their stories will allow us to tell a little bit of our story about how we've made it through 25, almost 26 years of being married and 29 years of being together, which is kind of crazy. I actually was thinking about that this morning. It's 29 years. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah, we just had a kid graduate from college this past weekend.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right? So we thought one of the best things we could do is impromptu conversation about our takeaways from the first few episodes. And the first episode was Steve and Laura Weatherford,
who we know very well and love deeply. They came on and they talked about how they manage their family of 6 children. Ace is, I'm going to get his age wrong. I think he's 14.
Okay, yeah.
Kingston, the youngest, will be 1 in just a few weeks. And they have bookend boys, 4 girls in the middle. And how they keep marriage and family priorities the main thing. How they keep the main thing the main thing. Steve and Laura very graciously share struggles that they've come through. And I would recommend go to Steve's podcast. He's incredibly open about where he's been in life, his successes, what he considers to be some of his failures and how he's recovered from those. But my big takeaway from Steve and Laura, I think probably because we do know them well, is that they are so real.
Yes. For real, right?
Yeah. So real, in fact, that we gifted Steve a pack of adult diapers about 2 weeks ago. So if you don't follow Steve on Instagram, please go do, because he will be a constant source of good nuggets of wisdom, but also great entertainment.
Lots of good entertainment. Yeah, he is. They're both amazing. Their kids are amazing. Like it was just fun. And one of the biggest probably takeaways from theirs, and actually was one of the most requested subjects that people said they wanted to know about when we talked about creating this podcast, and what people wanted to know about was, how do you keep dating your spouse? And I felt like no better person to ask that than a family who has 6 children. And they continue to make it a priority every single week of dating. And they give a lot of good information specifically about that, about how they managed finding babysitters and the time that was spent, the intentional time with each other, like deep diving into conversations with each other and what they talked about.
And for sure, I want to honor Laura for making a very valid point in saying, women, don't let your kids become your excuse,
Right.
because that's a very easy thing to do. We have half as many, and that has been one of the things that we struggle with is who's going to watch the kids.
Right.
But don't let them become an excuse, because you've got to know somebody who has a kid who would like to make a couple extra dollars and entertain your kids while you go out and have a good connection with your spouse. We probably have some inappropriately funny conversations while we're out on date night.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe we should record some of those and make them a podcast eventually.
I don't know if the world is ready for that or not.
so yeah, they did a great job. Like Laura did a good job of speaking into the women there, and Steve did a good job of speaking to men. Mm-hmm. About being on point, being the planner, making it a priority, and how to drive the conversation, and the responsibility of the husband in that situation of driving that in the direction of that conversation for the family, which was awesome. Episode 2 was Brooke and Chad, right?
Yes, 2 amazing people in their own right, and honestly, together, even more impactful because of what both of them separately have walked through and how they have come together and really shown. One of the things that I think we took away from having Brooke and Chad was grace on grace, and then having mercy, and just being really able to understand that no one's bad. No one's sin is superseded by anybody else's. They're all bad.
Right.
And how to legitimately come to a point where you turn your personal feelings off, letting your emotions not take over, and really letting God's grace shine through in situations.
Yeah. The story she shared about the way Chad loved her through her recovery of her addiction was just super impactful for me. And how they view each other so graciously. It's funny. I asked them about how they viewed the other, and they kept talking about how they were so different. And they are. Their personalities are drastically different. But the word they used to describe each other was grace. Mm-hmm. Both of them showed a huge amount of grace. They both have really interesting testimonies in and of themselves. I actually shared with my pastor. We talked about this episode, and I sent it to him so he could take a listen, because he loves anything having to do with military, Pastor Chris. Mm-hmm. And so we had some conversation about it after the fact. And I said, "Yeah, man, Chad's intense." And he goes, "Yeah, but man, his wife, wow, what a story. What a way for her to share."
And if you haven't heard their story, 3 of 7 podcast is Chad's podcast. They're all good. Listen to all of them. But if you want to know more about Brooke and Chad's story, they did several called the Origin series where they walk you through how they met up into where they are now. Lots of amazing conversation. They're both, I don't even think they realize that they're very easy to listen to. Some very deep South colloquial phrases. We'll let you guys discover what those were. But if you've not heard their story, 3 of 7 podcast, tons of great content there with Chad, and then Brooke coming on several others to kind of share where they've been, which is all over. And wow.
And great. And just how, like I said, the point of all of these podcasts are the way that we deal with struggles independently and as a couple together, So, I mean, if you listen to that origin story, you'll hear their independent struggles, but how they handle those independent struggles collectively as a couple. It's always amazing to hear. The 3rd episode was Brent and Aaron Weidemann. Mm-hmm. And this time I said his name right.
You did.
First time. Yeah.
You did. Brent and Aaron have an amazing story. Aaron is a 5-time cancer survivor. They have 2 children. They're in the process of adoption. But I think the bigger takeaway is they are 100% on board to mentor and help people share their story. They also created Bible Bells, which, if you're not familiar with that, check them out online. They've got some amazing stories about girls, women in the Bible that showed up well. When you think about Bible stories, you think about Moses and probably Noah. Of course,
David.
you always think about, the characters in the Gospels, but you think about women, you think about Esther and Ruth, because, well, that's good. That's kind of it, but that's really not it. There are a lot of women who are very, very instrumental, very strategic in carrying out the prophecies, and they do a really great job of showcasing that in Bible Bells. But I think when we were talking with Brent and Aaron, she made such a good point. She said, we can't sit in our salvation like it's this amazing warm bubble bath. Like we just can't sit and relax in it. That's not what it's meant for. So if you're not going out and sharing and you're not doing your part, then what are you doing? What's the point?
Being a disciple. It was the first time I'd ever heard it put that way, sitting in your salvation. And I think since that episode, I have used it 100 times.
Mm-hmm.
I've used it teaching our Connect group, because we do teach an older class of Connect. Our Connect group is an older class, and I think sometimes us in our generation see that older generation is of being able to, or starting to sit in it a little bit. So using that as a challenge to them to keep at it, man. If you still got breath, you're still in the responsibility of doing what we're called to do, and that is we are a sent people, disciples making disciples. But yeah, Brent and Aaron's great story, great company. It's neat to hear, to me, how they've grown Bible Bells from this idea of finding these stories of these women to now growing it into and it was for early readers.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's to the point of mentoring young ladies from middle school into early college.
Mm-hmm.
So it's as they have grown and they're reaching a different audience, that audience grows and the age of the audience grows, which was pretty cool to see how they walked through that and how it's grown and how they are just on fire to do it.
Right.
It's their passion.
And that actually evolved into Truth Becomes Her, which is a mentoring platform. So if you're a woman who has the ability to pour into younger women, that platform is really built to tell you how, to kind of walk you through it. Because a lot of people want to be more involved, but they just really don't even know where to start. So Truth Becomes Her, and all of this will be linked in the notes, so please check it out. But it's a great way to get more involved where you are. So you don't have to do great, big, amazing things and big productions. Sometimes it's about showing up to the people that you're already around.
Right. Episode 4, we felt like would be one of the probably most downloaded and listened to and talked about episodes, with Pastor Ivy and Benet Marsh out of Alabama. And it was, let's talk about sex, baby.
Because I have to laugh at that, because that was actually my idea to call it that.
It was.
But a lot of times they do mentoring, but they also do marriage mentoring. They do marriage workshops, weekends, very involved in helping couples grow their connection, grow their intimacy in a very biblical, safe way, and helping them to understand, I guess, better on a deeper level, where the lines in the road are,
right,
and how to stay healthy.
Yeah.
I'm not even exactly sure how to phrase that, but some of the things that came up was, what's okay,
right,
and answering the question of, is this okay inside of my marriage? Is this healthy inside of my marriage? And one of the big things is no porn is not okay,
right,
in or out of your marriage, and how that sets people up for unrealistic expectations, unfulfilling sex lives. And if you're going to be with the same person for a really long time, that's an important part to get right.
Right. For real. And it's funny, as we recorded that and we actually talked about it afterwards, we felt like it would be interesting to hear the take from two pastors. And actually that was one of the things that when we asked about, hey, what do you want to hear about?
Yeah. The marriage counselors in the room said, please talk about sex.
Yeah.
Because that's something that's not talked about by and large.
By the church.
Right.
And
And people are confused and looking in all the wrong places. for their
all the
information.
wrong answers.
Yeah.
And it was some huge takeaways. Pastor Ivy and Benet did a great job of discussing some of through their coaching and through their weekends that they put together, what they saw standing in the way of fulfilling sex lives in marriage, what gets in the way. And sometimes it seemed really, really simple. Mm-hmm. And just being able to have that conversation. But I will say that held true. It's been the most listened to, the most downloaded, the most conversed about, I guess is.
It's been lots of conversation.
A lot of conversation.
But Ivy and Benet are pastors of Becoming Church, and they have Becoming Man, Becoming Woman, Becoming One. They have a ton of different outlets and resources available. If you're interested in connecting with them, please do, because they're two really amazing humans.
And they're working on that. They've got a ranch of where they're
Legacy Ranch
that they're working on now to where they're going to house all of these on one basic spot. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be like a central location where they can do a lot of this coaching, and they are absolutely gifted in it. Yes. Ivy is gifted in speaking into men and really getting them to the heart of where they need to be. And to see, at this point, I've been able to be around Benet and Ivy together, and they're as fun together in person as they were on the podcast. They're giggly and funny, and because they've been together,
and they're also very real. Like every couple that we've talked to has been just exceedingly transparent and vulnerable and open and just real. Yep. So if there's anything you can take away above and beyond what they actually saying is, this is how they really are. They're not putting on a show for you, for sure.
Episode 5. Noah and Shentel Elias.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about Noah a little more, because you know more about him.
Yeah, so I've been able to spend some time with Noah now, involved in a mastermind that he leads, the master's program, which I'm excited to be a part of. That's going to last 3 years. Excited enough that came home and talked about it, and you decided to hook up the women's group in Atlanta. He's a creative. He works through Disney, not for Disney, but his art with The Kid in Me, and he does a ton of fine art. Like, it's amazing work that he sells through the Disney platform, but he produces his own work. He is his own company, and his heart for the Lord, as well as the work that he's done in Africa with the children's home that they've built there. It's very inspiring to be around him. We connect on Telegram all the time, just watching how he encourages other men to step up and be leaders and be the men that God created us to be. Like how they've raised just everything about him. It's interesting, I think is the best way to put it. He uses his creative brain in a way,
in a lot of ways,
every way possible. It's just, when people think about creatives, a lot of times I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think people see them as being aloof and dreamy and all that. And he's a big visionary, but be very grounded in his faith walk. And I think that grounded of what he sees as his vision and what his ultimate purpose on this walk of life and walk on the earth is, it has a ton of value. Mm-hmm. And what they shared with us on the podcast was about being the example for your children, because the best lessons are caught and not taught. So it's not about what you teach your kids, but it's what they catch from you
as you're doing life,
how you show up to your children. And then the other one was respond versus react.
And that had a lot to do with how you prepare yourself and how you're structuring your day, structuring your life, structuring your time, so that you're able to, in a situation that you weren't expecting, not be reactionary and causing more problems, but being responsive to both your needs and the needs of those people involved in the situation for the best outcome.
Right. It was so just a lot of wisdom nuggets, which he is really good at dropping those. I get to hear him almost on a daily basis now through the master's program, but it's been interesting. And that's how I got connected to that, was through the podcast, but just a lot of life lessons from them. Lots of marriage trials and tribulations, lots of challenges that they have faced over their many years of marriage, and how putting Christ at the center of it has brought them through in almost every occasion, or in every occasion.
Mm-hmm. And I think a common theme through the first 5, well, all of them really, but we're talking about the first 5 right now, is you have to intentionally work on yourself.
Yes.
And be the best version of yourself in order to show up well for other people, for those that you may lead, for those that are in your family, for those that you just run into who you can show up differently for, because you're working on yourself and you realize where your pitfalls are, right, where you need to pour more energy into them. I think that has come across very, very loudly, is that work on you first before you even consider giving someone else what you would make me think of as advice.
Yeah. And I think, Steve said it when he was talking about Laura and their relationship. And not, a lot of people get offended when we start talking about women being submissive, but they just don't understand the meaning of that, right? Because there's so many horrible world definitions of that, what submissive means. But he said, it made it easier for her to be submissive when she saw that I was being submissive first into what God had planned for me, and how like putting him first in his life made it easier for her to step into her role of being a helpmate, and understanding that it was his job to guide and lead the family. Working on himself first was the key to that,
Mm-hmm.
So it was, everybody's common thing for sure is, how do you work on yourself first?
Right. What are your other takeaways?
What are my other takeaways? Like I said in the beginning, it's really hard to get couples to sit down. I've reached out to several and got an immediate yes from the husband. And then they ran the idea by the wife, and the wife was like, "Ooh, no, not comfortable doing that." So there's still some amazing stories to come. It just may be from one side of the family, because I don't want anybody's story to be missed because of a level of comfort from one side of the family.
And it's okay to not be comfortable doing this.
I was gonna say, if they actually knew your space and your headspace and where you come from, like, comfort would not be what they would be talking about. So this is, again, you're a blessing on here, but it's not your space. Like, it's not something you're comfortable doing. But I do thank you for it. I honor you for it. It's been fun.
It's been interesting.
It has been fun.
So as we are going to actually probably end this at 30 minutes.
I can't believe it.
Well, I don't know. I'm getting ready to give you the floor, so we might be here for another hour.
No. That could be ugly.
So I think it's important to kind of let everybody know where we come from,
right?
In terms of what do we do every day, and how does that potentially translate into what we're doing here?
Yeah.
Maybe more for me than for you.
Probably.
So would you like for me to describe you? Keep it short.
Good luck. You go ahead.
All right. So Chris has, for the length of time that I've known you, has been in the car business in various and many different roles. The hat you wear now is COO, and you are great at creating what the business is going to look like in 5 and 10 years. You are terrible at actually putting that into practice, which is why you have somebody who does that for you. I'm going to give a shout out to Winford. Good job, man. Way to handle him. But your big passion, as I see it, is really creating the ability for people to shine in their spaces by having them empowered to learn who they are, to really develop their special gifts and talents, and overcome the excuses that they tell themselves on a daily basis to why they can't be great, why they can't do all the amazing things that they really want to do. You're gifted in pouring into people, I think.
I'll take that. I receive that, because I think it's right. I don't know that I've ever thought about it that deeply, or that's when you're good with words. But I do love watching people develop. I'd say that ultimately I see, and people are going, he's in the car business and he's doing a family podcast. Like, what makes him think he's an expert?
We're not, by the way.
We're not. But I think that, I've said it multiple times. I want our business to be seen as a leadership development company that's disguised as an automobile dealership company. And people that come into our organization, regardless of what seat they sit in, giving them the opportunity to develop into the best them that they can possibly be and be able to lead themselves well. That's really in my heart, because I know if that happens, the business will be successful. It's just going to be a side effect. And I think the more that we focus on the individual, that the business has the opportunity to grow, for sure. So is it my turn to describe you?
Yeah.
Because I don't know that I can do as good a job as you just did. But it's funny when you said that, what came to my mind, and this is wild that we've never had this conversation like this, but I think that's something we share, because I've heard how much you love people developing beyond the excuses they tell themselves. I've never thought about how me being in my space, because it is way different than yours, that we do share the same heart of developing people, and I think us having children has had an effect on that. I know it's had an effect on me, because I want my children to develop, and you can't help but your love for children is just different. But if you can turn that into a love of people, if we love like Christ, it's you love everyone as a brother or sister, and I think that's where that comes from. So talk about what you do, since I just vomited all over it. Go ahead.
So I am a naturopath by training, a biblical naturopath by choice. And it's all about uncovering and maybe discovering the root reasons why people are like they are, do what they do, and feel what they feel in a vast scope. So from the spiritual realm to their physical bodies, to their relationships, to their ability to communicate. Man, we cover all the bases, but it's like an onion. You just have to peel back layer after layer after layer and get people to understand that you're not your label. I think I was talking to someone about 2 weeks ago, and I said, my biggest thing is I don't want to know what's wrong with you, because that's surface. What's wrong with you is surface. I want to know what's going on with you, from how you're sleeping, to what you're eating, to what you're putting in your brain every day, to who are you surrounding yourself with, all of that, but really breaking it down to the barest of bare essentials and then building back from that point. And I've seen the fruit of the stuff going on at the stores, because I've been involved in a wellness with your employees. And it's really awesome to have them come back and go, man, I've really never thought about it like that. You just put it in a completely different perspective. And I think that's what we both do, is give them a different lens of life to look at things through, and then encouraging them to take off those glasses and then put on somebody else's, especially when they're trying to either remedy or correct or direct or manage, whatever word you want to put in there, but just giving them how to best respond so that the person they're talking to gets it. Right. Because everybody's vision is different. Everybody's view of successful completion is different, and helping people understand that we're all different, but man, we just really want you to be the best and have the best and flourish.
Right. I think that's the fulfillment part of the podcast, right? Faith, family, fulfillment, helping people find fulfillment. Maybe, I always ask, what's our superpower? Is that I don't know that that's our superpower, though. You think? Maybe we should ask our children that. What's our superpower? That could be an ugly conversation. That would be interesting. So
it would be interesting. All right. So we have 5 seconds. Close this off.
Unbelievable.
We did it.
You know what I didn't do? I didn't pray us in.
Well, you can pray us out.
I'll pray us out. Okay. I'll pray us out.
Okay. We did it.
Yeah. Amazing. I can't believe we got done in 30 minutes. It's never been done before.
I don't pray for 5 minutes.
Oh, Lord, thank you for this time today that we have been able to just share and recap some of the lessons that we have learned as a couple ourselves, and that we have been able to share with our audience just over those first 5 episodes. Thank you for us giving us the space and this time, and helping us drive those conversations, giving us the questions that will help bring the story to light where you get the glory. We thank you for all that you do for us. We thank you for every blessing that's brought our way. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Faith, Family, Fulfillment, brought to you by Chris and Suzanne Vester. We hope you enjoyed listening to this week's guests and stories. If you liked what you heard, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow Chris and Suzanne on Instagram at HVAUTOCOO and Suzanne.c.vester. That's at SUZANNE.c.vester.